It has been nothing short of fast and furious growth for M League, the parent company of Mobile Premier League that has emerged as a leading free-to-play online skill gaming and esports platform built and made here in India. What started off on a rooftop doubling up as a gaming arena with games loaded on mobile phones is today a platform that offers a diversified portfolio of over 110 games across categories to its 220 million registered users. On this episode of Disruptor Dialogues, we catch up with Sai Srinivas, the co-founder and CEO of M League, on his mission to make gaming a cross-country, cross-continent sport, allowing people to play, compete, and win beyond borders. Thank you, Sai, so much for being on Disruptor Dialogues with us on YourStory, and great to be here at the MPL headquarters.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Let's go back to your starting up journey. You as a founder started off with a hardware company, and then you transitioned into building this consumer internet business, a consumer product in the gaming space. So tell us how that transition happened and why you picked gaming as an industry.
So to be honest, if you rewind a little further from the hardware company, I actually started my career as a game designer. I worked with Zynga in India back in the day as a game designer, and then I became a product manager with them. So I actually was in gaming, and I really enjoyed it. When I quit Zynga, and the main reason for quitting was because I wanted to start something on my own. And I think we spent a little bit of time doing something in gaming back then, but we kind of felt that India was not there yet, and India was not ready for gaming to take off. And to be honest, for any digital business, purely digital business content like gaming to take off, you need three fundamental things for a market to be ready. You need the device, you need the network, and you need the payments infrastructure. Like device as in like the phone, hardware, and network as in like, really good internet. And of course, payments as in the ability to pay small amounts of transactions. And if you were to go back to 2014, none of these three things were there, right? So we kind of felt that, hey, you know what, there's no point doing gaming at that point. And I think at that point, me and my co-founder, in fact, Shubh, who's also my co-founder here, we both were like, hey, let's go make this hardware company, because that seems to be something that's interesting. But little did we know that hardware is so hard. That's why it's probably called hardware. And then, we did that for 3 years, and then we exited. And if you were to look at 2014 to 2018, a lot of things changed. All those three things came into place now. You had devices, of course, everybody had good phones. But the next big thing that happened was you had internet. Like, internet was like, there's so much cheap data available, right? But I think the most disruptive thing that happened in India is actually payments. I think in 2016, UPI really went mainstream, and everybody now could actually pay small amounts of money with zero interchange fee. Because of these three things is why we felt, hey, you know what, this is the best time for gaming. And at that point, we said, what is the best way to actually build a gaming business in India? And we said, why don't we build a gaming platform? And I think we had a choice to do either free to play or do skill gaming. And the fact of the matter is that in India, unlike the West, skill gaming is the preferred method of monetization for most Indians. They enjoy paying money this way. That's why we started MPL. We felt that MPL could be the ideal skill gaming platform. And the vision at that point with MPL, and still continues to be the same, is that if a game developer's made a mobile game, we thought, why shouldn't there be a platform where if a game developer wanted to host a World Cup in his game, like have players from about 20 different countries compete in a World Cup, then there's no such platform available. And I said, why don't we make a platform that could do that? And that was the genesis of MPL.
So tell me a little bit more about the India market, and how it has evolved since you started, because we do know that India is the largest country for game downloads. That numbers has hit about 442 million now, surpassing only China. So what worked out for you then, and how has it evolved now?
The number of people who choose gaming as the preferred mode of entertainment has dramatically increased. If you were to look at India's content consumption habits, right? India historically has been a very cinema-first, video-first content consumption habit, right? In sense, like even when I was growing up, the preferred mode of mass entertainment was cinema, coming from Hyderabad, right? And I think what's changed and what's changing right now is most young people are way more comfortable spending time playing a game, engaging with the game, and actually paying for it than it was in 2018. 2017 or 2018, if you go to an average, Indian customer and tell them, hey, are you going to spend some money on this game? Or are you going to buy something in this game? Or are you going to pay some money to join a competition? They're like, why should I pay money? Games to free hote hain. मैं पैसे क्यों दूँ, right? And I think what's happened in the 6 years is that that philosophy has changed, that thought process has changed, and you've seen that already happen in OTT. People are now way more comfortable paying for that OTT subscription than what it was previously. As I think Gen Z becomes more and more the larger part of the internet using population, you would only see that gaming is going to be the more preferred format of content consumption than any other medium. And I'll give you a small example why I say that. Even if there is time consumption in your content habits, and then there is money consumption in your content habits. So there's this, where do you spend your time and where do you spend your money? And these are two very different things. If you were to take video and audio as a format of content, the amount of money you spend on that is actually capped. At best, you will get 4 or 5 subscriptions. At best, you'll get a music platform subscription. But once you have that subscription, you're done. You're not going to essentially spend any more because you get everything under that. But the thing with games is that there is so many games available. The amount of time you can spend on the game vis-a-vis the amount of money you can also interact with it is way higher. And the advantage is there will always be a game which will offer you some format of engagement at 4 rupees, 5 rupees, 10 rupees, 12 rupees. And if you were to look back at India, every business that's become huge in India has been able to provide their services for as small as 1 rupee, but as high as even 10,000 rupees. Think of what FMCG did with sachetization. Think of what even biscuits like Parle-G did with the small packet. And that is very easy to do with gaming. That is very hard to do with, say, video and audio. And which is the reason why this thing which has happened is India is now the largest country by downloads. Very soon, India will be the largest country by DAU for games. I think it already is there and thereabouts, slightly behind China. The journey from it being the largest country from downloads to, I'd say, the largest country by revenue, I think would probably take 15, 20 years. But we don't necessarily need to be the largest country by revenues. Even if we are 1/10 or 1/8 the ARPU of America, India as a market would be as lucrative as America is, and because of the number of people.
The population,
exactly. Yeah. We've seen what gaming companies could achieve in China, like companies like Tencent, companies like NetEase. They've ended up becoming some of the largest tech companies globally. If India as a market gets there, I think the probability that some Indian companies also achieve that stature is fairly high.
Now that you've set your North Star, interesting to also see this evolution happening in the gaming space, and you have this constant funnel where the younger generation and the population sort of keep getting exposed to the gaming industry and coming in. But, at the end of the day, it's also about your value prop and the demand that you create to actually run a successful business. So let's talk about that.
There is content, and then there is a choice of how you monetize this content. For example, every game can be monetized in 3 different ways. You can either run ads on that game, you can either do free to play, which is sell virtual items in the game, or you can run real money tournaments, skill gaming, which is what MPL did. The fact is, as a content developer, it's imperative that you make money. If you don't make money, then you're not going to make content after a point, right? So MPL identified that only and the best way, given the circumstances in 2018 and 2020, was choosing skill gaming as the monetization mechanic. Currently, if you were to look at skill games back then, there were only 1 or 2 games. There was Daily Fantasy and there was, say, Rummy, online Rummy. And MPL's view was that, there are so many more obvious skill games which don't even need to be questioned. If you had 100 people in India, the probability that more people played caroms or pool is way higher than the number of people who probably play online Rummy. So we said, why don't we build a platform where we get all these casual games? That was the fundamental difference between us and everybody else out there. What that did was that it increased our target audience and the potential users that we could bring to probably 10x or in fact even I'd say 20x when compared to the existing guys. We did our first beta of the product in July sometime, and I think we went live in the first week of September. I think by December 31st of 2018, we were already at about 1 million daily active users.
So did that number surprise you? I mean, you hit these major milestones in a matter of 2 to 4 months.
Like, we just were very unprepared to deal with 1 million daily active users. We had no idea how to manage it. We didn't have any idea how to figure out next steps. And so as a consequence of it, crazy growth is also very dangerous at times because everybody loves looking at a rocket ship and says, hey man, this is a rocket ship. But the thing with a rocket ship is even if the angle tilts by 1 degree incorrectly, the rocket ship goes kaboom, right? So I think that was a little bit like what we were feeling. We were feeling as if we were riding a tiger. We really didn't know what's going to happen next, whether we'll be able to get through alive. But as a consequence of us getting to 1 million daily active users, it allowed us time to figure out how to make money out of this and how do we build a business that eventually is profitable and generates value, right?
So you figure out your monetization strategy also pretty early, which is not the case for a lot of startups here in India. We're moving there now, but in India, a lot of the games are currently geared towards freemium, and you started monetization pretty early on. If I have an MPL app downloaded on my phone, what does it mean to play a free-to-play game, for real money, and what are the other modes of monetization?
Absolutely. I think in MPL as of today, so there's only one major mode of monetization. We have options to consider others, but we're choosing not to do that till we get to a certain scale. Current method of monetization is purely skill gaming or real money tournaments, and the way that works is very simple. If let's assume there's a game of carom, you and I enter this game of carom with, say, with a 10 rupee entry fee, or there might be 100 people entering this game of carom with a 10 rupee entry fee, and then there's a tournament, and then there are ranks, and there are prize monies associated with first rank, second rank, third rank, fourth rank. This method of building tournaments is something that existed in physical sport forever. It's only logical that it, of course, can be extended for virtual games. And I think that was the business model we chose. MPL is the first business we started. Currently, 60% of our overall revenue. But if you were to look at our other businesses, which is Game Duel, which is the European business, they focus primarily on free-to-play. And their majority of the revenue comes from in-app purchases and freemium model. Our other businesses which we've announced, which is Blast Plus, which is our publishing business, our intent with that is to bring great quality games from all over the world and launch them into India. That business purely focuses on making money through in-app purchases, freemium as you just said, and then Mayhem Studios, which is the gaming studio that we started and we own a part of now. That also focuses on making money through freemium.
When you look at the growth, we spoke about a lot of major milestones that you touched. COVID was a huge tailwind for you, in fact, one of the biggest pushes. But now that it's completely waning, how are you keeping that momentum?
What happened in COVID was that a lot of people in India experienced gaming for the first time. The business obviously took off. I think post-COVID, the business definitely didn't dip. The business just stayed like that. But then it again started growing as more and more users in India started adopting gaming. And the reason for that, unlike, say, the Western markets, is that in the Western markets, pretty much the entire internet population already was used to playing games. Whereas in India, that was not the case. Gaming is a very elastic business. You could enjoy a game in 1 rupee, you could enjoy a game in 5 rupees, you could enjoy a game in 10 rupees, right? You can't say that about many products, right? And as a consequence, gaming as a business only potentially slows down if one of two things happen. Either you stop making new content, or you stop having new customers, or the existing customers don't spend or spend less. Only in the situation where none of them are happening is you absolutely see stagnation or degrowth. As far as India is concerned, I think for the next decade, I'd say it's fair to assume that, if you're a business who's getting their act right in at least 2 out of 3, you should see 20% top line growth.
So while you do have population scale also, at your benefit here in India, the other thing when it comes to a consumer internet business like this is, the cost of customer acquisition as well, and how do you get your ROI on that? So tell me a little bit about the retention strategies really that you adopt at MPL, because when you talk about skill gaming, it's also about, a particular user to remain a daily active user needs to upskill and also essentially be spending more time on the platform or in a particular
100%.
game.
The best way to retain a customer is to just ensure that the customer is firstly just playing and enjoying the product. Whether they pay, whether they don't pay, honest, is secondary, and it's personally very immaterial, right? And so our number one focus is always that, hey, are you enjoying your game? We really don't stress too much whether you pay 5 rupees for it, whether you pay 50 rupees for it, whether you pay 100 rupees for it. And people usually churn as a function of two things. One is boredom, and second is when they overspend. Boredom is something that we as a platform tackle very well, because if you're bored of one game, you can always go access another game and you can enjoy another game. And so therefore, platforms in general tend to have way better retentions and way better consumer engagement than single category product. If you are a shopping mall and if you have a platform with a multiple choice available, the probability that people are going to have a better time is much higher. So that's the first thing. The second way how people churn, when you put them in a situation where they're spending beyond their means, when they're overdoing it, and when they are not particularly having a game where they're matched with another player of a similar skill level. For example, let's assume you go play tennis, right? And you end up playing with, say, the best player in Bangalore. You are not going to enjoy the game. Even the other player is not going to enjoy the game but let's assume you play with someone at your own same level. Then you will enjoy this game and you'll really come back and play again. This, by the way, is a very proven thing in psychology. It's referred to as flow. And if you see athletes or if you see musicians, it's the purpose of any video game or purpose of any sport is to get you into a state of flow, which is when you're really enjoying your game and you're playing with someone at your same level. So therefore, there's a challenge, and you also are interested in the game and you're also getting better at the game. Our focus is always to try and find players who are at the same skill level to compete with each other. So therefore, it becomes an engaging game for the customer. So this is a purely objective endeavor, which is the better you are at data science, the better you do this. This is purely a subjective creative endeavor. The more different games you make, the more quality and creative games you make, the more people will enjoy. So as a consumer company in gaming, you need to master both of this. And one of the things that we are extremely proud of is our entire data science capabilities. The level of work that we do in understanding your skill score, which is how good or bad you are in a particular game and what your score is, quite sophisticated. We measure players on multiple different axes, on their ability to make decisions, on their time they've taken to make a decision. We have the score for every single game, and it's of course an AI-driven algorithm that learns on its own. We did this before AI was cool, just to be clear. When we match bases that, it should ideally yield a very close encounter, right? As a combination of a variety of games, and this is, we believe, very strong strategy. If you were to look at the total number of active users we have in a year, in 2018, the percentage of users who played only one game on the platform was about 75%. The percentage of players who play only one game as of 2024 on the platform is less than 20%. So 80% of my players are players who play more than one game. In fact, about 25% of my players active in a year play more than about 4 or 5 games. And as long as that keeps growing, I'm in a good place.
They're fascinating to understand the science behind all of this. If you can tell me, some of the, fun facts, the single most popular game.
I think it's actually a close fight, to be honest, right? I think between Call Break, between Ludo, between even Rummy. So all these games are fairly well played, but I'd say if Ludo obviously takes a little bit of an edge, but Call Break and Bridge are also fairly popular. That's one. But the game that I'm currently excited the most about across the entire M League group, which is MPL, Game Duel, and everything else that we're doing, is this game called Rame, which is a free-to-play game that our studio in Berlin has made, Game Duel. This game is currently topping the charts in all countries in Europe.
Where do fantasy games sort of stack up in this whole thing? Because there was this huge craze around fantasy games at one point.
Yeah,
and cricket, of course.
Look, cricket always is going to be a craze. I mean, it's crazy how much cricket we play and how much we still want to play and how much we watch it, right? So I think we did fantasy, or we focused on fantasy in, say, from 2019 to, say, 2020, 2021. We eventually then realized that this is not a market that is close to games. Then after that, we kind of like stopped focusing on that, and I think fantasy now accounts to less than 1% of our overall revenue, or 1 or 2%, I'd say. And in fact, in terms of active users also, it's a very small segment. And I think it's natural, right? Even if you take US, right? US also fantasy had this. Fantasy had a specific this phase, and like every game, like I said, eventually will have its, and fantasy is not the most popular thing in the US today.
So let's talk about, how you go about enabling the developer community as well, and how you keep this constant pipeline of, new iterative games coming in. What kind of work do you do with the gaming developer community?
We actively invest and we actively enable a whole bunch of game developers to build their games, first and foremost. We now have slightly more global exposure, but we also have a better understanding of our own business and our own product, where we're bringing developers not only from India but across the world and launching their games on MPL and proving that, hey, they can monetize on skill games. The way the game development industry is structured, unfortunately, is that it's made it impractical today for a small indie studio in India for them to just put up a game and launch it on the platform and make money. Our hope and our goal is that, let's assume you make a tic-tac-toe game, as simple as it sounds, and you want to run skill gaming tournaments on that tic-tac-toe game. Our goal is to enable you to launch it on MPL and get a bunch of people to play that game, and as a consequence, you should be able to make money. If you were to ask me how many years, how far away are we from truly realizing that potential, I'd take a guess of at least three and a half years away. But to give you context, from that point to it catching fire and a lot of people, that is actually a short time. It's true with anything.
Once it gets started, then the
Yes,
explosion
yeah, exactly.
will happen.
In the last 5-6 years, our understanding and our experiences have honestly truly humbled us, and we've kind of recognized and realized that, man, if you want to build something to the scale of what some of our Eastern counterparts have achieved, be it WeChat, be it Navier, be it many other companies across Japan, the level of perseverance and the consistency and the patience we need is way more than what we assume going into it.
And now I just wanted to understand your entire free-to-play strategy, because you spoke and touched upon that quite a bit. You did mention that is the next big, thing that you want to develop.
MPL was the first business, of course, the business we started as a part of M League, and it's the business that focuses on skill gaming, right? Our first, foray into free-to-play happened as a function of us acquiring this business called Game Deal, based out of Germany. Back when we acquired it, it was a smaller studio which had one free-to-play game, and they had a skill gaming platform for the web. Like MPL is for the mobile, they had a skill gaming platform for the web. But the reason we acquired them was that their plan was to focus on building a free-to-play games platform, which enables them to make any card and board game for any country and manage those card and board games through a single infrastructure, right? So that was the big plan when we acquired them in 22. And I think since 22, they have now shipped about 4 new games, I think roughly 2 games per year. Out of the 4 games, 3 have been out-and-out hits, and 3 have been hits in their own markets. If you take some of the most successful free-to-play games in India, they are now making more money in a year than probably the most successful movie makes in that year. These are mainly your shooter games, like first-person shooter games, like say your BGMI, Free Fire. These are the top 2 games in that category. The interesting other stat that's happened in free-to-play that we noticed is that the number of Indian players who are now willing to spend money, the percentage conversion has improved and improved dramatically. Out of 100 people who enter a free-to-play game, depending on the kind of game, anywhere between 15 to 30% of them end up becoming paying users. As a consequence, what we kind of understood was that, okay, now there are a bunch of people who are willing to spend, but there isn't enough variety of content that's available on the Play Store. So our goal with, Blast Plus was that we want to now focus on bringing content from wherever it is, from Japan, from Korea, from Europe, from America, from Brazil, wherever. And if we believe that this content is something that we think would be fun for Indian customers and Indian gamers, then we will bring that content, we will figure out how to localize the content and put the right kind of monetization strategies in that content and launch that content in India. This is, by the way, a globally proven strategy. The third piece of this entire thing is that we are very open, and in fact, we are very actively looking at investing in game studios that focus on making free-to-play titles, who are looking at launching their free-to-play titles in India. And I think that is something we've started early last year, but we made about 1 or 2 investments, and we intend to hopefully see those games live in the market in India, and some of them are doing already very, very well. Last year, like $750 million of revenue was generated in free-to-play games in India. That market is definitely poised to grow by about at least 15 to 20%. We believe the market can grow further, and we believe the reason why it's not happening is that there's no content. Like if there was more content, then there's more growth. Those games which I told you about, like say the shooter games, even Candy Crush is a pretty popular and big game in India, right? Most people spend money on buying energy. Energy in the sense the more turns in the game. Most people spend money trying to buy other forms of consumables in that game. And if you were to take a shooter game, a first-person shooter game, people buy skins that they can put on their avatar while they're playing the game. So this is already happening in India.
You've chalked out your entire free-to-play, the next big card for you as an entire entity. MPL itself has international operations as well. You have in North America, in Nigeria. Give us a sense of the scale that you've achieved there and your overall say, the registered users that you have, and more importantly, the monthly active paying customers?
So at the overall M League level, which includes MPL, Game Duel, and all our, right, we make about 60% of our revenue from India at a group level and 40% from outside India. We do about 65 to 66% from skill gaming and about 33 to 35% from free to play. This is at an overall group level. MPL is a skill gaming company, and MPL, of course, as you said, has businesses in India, US, and Nigeria, and hopefully more countries soon. In MPL, 90% of the revenue actually for the MPL business actually comes from India. Only sub 10% revenue as of today comes from these other markets. And our intention and our goal is to take that sub 10% to 20-30% in the next, say, 1.5 years. Our vision is to enable global competitions on any game. If tomorrow there's a game that Blast Plus puts out and the game is doing well in India, and now we want to host a World Cup in that game, we want to have players from 10 different countries compete in that game, then if MPL is there in those 10 countries, then we will be able to do that. So it's driven primarily by the core purpose of the company to be that global competitive gaming platform. That's first. So we got about 100 plus or 110 million odd registered users, 125, 20 to 25 globally. And we do anywhere between, we do roughly about 5 million monthly transacting customers across MPL. And most of them, of course, come from India. But our other geographies are also growing.
Now, when you look at the larger scheme of things, some of the headwinds, some of the tailwinds, and the entire regulatory aspect of it as well, because gaming as an industry, there seems to be this constant overhang of regulatory clarifications, the legality of gaming versus gambling. How do you navigate some of this, and do you feel there is still a lack of clarity when it comes to regulation?
So if you were to look at regulation, there are two things. There's the taxation and the legality. Right? I think legality, there is enough and more precedent in the country that competing in games of skill is a completely acceptable thing. Legality, like I said, has been clarified. In fact, there were draft rules that were published by the MeToo about a year and a half back, which is a great welcome step. The bigger issue was taxation. There was always a question mark on how this industry is going to be taxed. It was very anxiety-inducing for anyone in the business, and it also creates a lot of confusion for investors and anyone else who wants to participate in the value creation in the industry. But what happened, I think, in 2023 October, clarity got created. Right? Whether people like the clarity, don't like the clarity, that's a different story. The government came out and said, hey, this is how we intend to tax you, and at this slab, and this is how it's going to be going forward. End of subject. The only pending issue that's now left is retrospective taxation. I think that I think is a big cloud hovering around the ecosystem and the industry. That matter hopefully gets resolved soon. And I think when that gets done, I really believe that this industry will not only do well for skill gaming, but I think this industry will meaningfully plow money back into gaming overall in India.
Well, what do you think, helped you survive that storm? Because it was something quite a big hit.
We personally felt that difficulty is the mother of all invention, as they say, right? Like when this came, we realized ways and means in which we could really improve and extract more efficiency out of not only our business from an operation standpoint, but also from our product, right? I think one of the things we had to do is that we dramatically cut down our OPEX the instant that got announced. We just cut half of our headcount. To be very honest with you, we later on kind of realized that, we were okay. And that essentially means that we as a tech company were probably overstaffed. I'm fairly confident that every player in the industry will look back at the 2023 GST decision that was made and look back at it and saying that was a good thing that could have happened. Because imagine if that wouldn't have happened, we'd still be sitting here trying to figure out, hey, is this the right way to tax or is that the right way? Like indecision is the worst thing. Decision one way or the other, you figure out.
Yeah. The other aspect, the thing that you would look at is when you're playing for real money and, skill games, say on a platform like an MPL, how do you draw the line or give the user, the control for restrictions on how much they spend or how much time they spend, because that again can be addictive.
See, anything which is done beyond a certain moderation is bad. I think MPL has been at the forefront of focusing on consumer safety and consumer protection way before even it was, some of these rules were even put on us. I'll give you a few examples, right? Our ability to detect whether a particular transaction is fraud is gotten to a point where sometimes some fraudulent transaction would happen. We detected it's fraudulent. We blocked that money and we blocked that account, and now we wait for a complaint either through Cyber Police or they write to us. And at which point we say, hey, you know what? We have it, and you just go through the proper channels and we will ensure that we'll release it, right? We are very, very proactive in ensuring price moderation. Now we're building sophisticated algorithms to ensure that players are, when they've played a bunch of games or when they've had, and if they're overdoing it, we either pause them or we in fact reduce the price points so that you don't overspend. Our intention is for players to enjoy games and do so in a way which is fun and pay a small amount of rupees or small amount of money in doing that. Our intention is over the next 1-2 years, do more of it in a way which is automated so that as and when we detect something's going off, we automatically clamp it down. And phase one was giving user the agency. We realized that more than this, you got to do it automated.
Well, Sai, you've spoken like a true blue gamer. You've battled all the ups and downs of the gaming industry, armored yourself really to get onto your mission of democratizing gaming in India and across the world. So let's also go and get some real live action in your gaming studio.
Yes, let's go.
We're setting up to play a battle royale rooted in India, crafted for gangsters on the island of Dantara, which is a AAA game being developed by M-League-backed Mayhem Studios, which involves complex gameplay, high production value, and detailed storylines. Okay, so we've got Underworld Gang Wars loaded up there on our mobiles and streaming for our audience. Sai, if you can quickly take me through the storyline.
This is obviously a battle royale first-person shooter game, and this story is kind of like inspired from a little bit like Gangs of Wasseypur, where you have like an Indian gang which is called Bhokals, and you have like a Russian gang which is called Velvets, and they're fighting over this particular city, or should I say town, called Dhantara, the map of which you can see. And there's a river that flows between Dhantaras. One side of the river is essentially the Bhokal side, and one side of the river is like the Velvet side. It's like, I don't know if you remember this movie back in the day called Josh. There used to be Eagle Gang, Bichu Gang. I don't know if it was, I think it was Shah Rukh Khan and one other. Yeah, so it's a little of that. And the reason why we chose that theme was because we felt that in Bollywood, this entire gang theme is something that people really like and they enjoy. Now you're landing on a particular place. All the buildings and everything here, all of them are kind of themed around what you'd see in India. So like there's this really beautiful fort that you'd see in one part of the map. The game is still in beta, of course. I think the goal is to get to open beta sometime shortly. Yeah, and building these kind of games is actually fairly a long drawn endeavor. It takes a lot of effort to kind of like get every inch of the game right.
No, I can see how complex the gameplay is.
Our belief is that these kind of games and this level of depth is just going to happen whether we do it or someone else does it. Our hope is that we deliver that experience.
I think I'm pretty much dead in my game already.
It's okay. It's not an easy game. It's not an easy game. Yeah, I told you so, right?
It's not an easy game. You mentioned, so it's a multiplayer game. How many people are involved?
It's a 50-player multiplayer game, and the map that you're playing on, this map is a 5 kilometer by 5 kilometer map. And all the 50 players are simultaneously playing the game. Even if one player essentially has a bad experience, it's going to degrade for everyone else also. So it's a pretty complicated engineering, art, world building endeavor. It's important that we build these skills. Building these skills means that you can build game 2, game 3, game 4, and eventually I'm sure one of the other games is going to do well.
So how many registrations or pre-registrations do you have for the beta version?
We've gotten close to about 7 odd million pre-registrations. We were hoping we'd get the game out much sooner, but we definitely underestimated how complex games like these are, and that's the reason why it took us longer than what we thought. But eventually, if you get a good game out, I think people aren't going to be bothered about whether you got it out a month sooner or a few months later. So our intent is to get a good game out.
But how do you believe these AAA games will really change the course of gaming in India?
It will fundamentally give belief for Indian developers that we can make very in-depth and very different kinds of games, and games that are way more immersive and provide more in-depth gameplay experience. Having these skills means that you can use these skills today. You made a shooter game today. Tomorrow you could choose to make an open world game where the person is just exploring the world and so on and so forth. So it's like the more skills you build, the more kind of games you can make. The more kind of games you make, the more audiences will start playing the game. The way to think about these kind of games is that you can make all kinds of cinema. right? You can make a movie for YouTube, you can make a movie for an OTT platform, you can make a movie for 35mm, and then you can make an IMAX movie as well, right? This is more closer to an IMAX kind of an experience. The magnanimity and the grandeur of this experience, hopefully our intent is brings more people into the ecosystem, and also proves that an Indian game developer can monetize these games.
So would you say this is one of the biggest risks that you are taking? I mean, it's high risk, high cost at this point.
100%, 100%.
Will it be high reward?
Yeah, it is. It is definitely one of the biggest risks we've already taken. Initially, it was a fully owned company by us. Over the last few years, we now own about half of the company, and the rest of it is owned by other investors. And it tell you how much we are invested in to make this successful, right? Because we realized that it needed more capital, and so therefore we got other partners also to join us along the way.
And what about the talent required to actually build such a game? You know, like the engineers, UI, UX experts, animators, the cinematics, all of that. Where is this talent coming
It's
from?
global. For example, our art director for this game comes from UK. Across this game's lifecycle, we've had people from, I think, 12 different nationalities work on this game. India definitely doesn't have all the talent that's needed to make games like these. In talent and business, business needs to come first. Once business comes, automatically people will start building skills to, go join those businesses. I think hopefully in the next 3-4 years, this talent will increase in India.
You know, when it comes to a parallel, transition in the real world, do you feel like, playing a skill game will also translate into that person taking up a game or a sport in the real world?
See, I think playing games, it's been proven time and time again. It doesn't matter whether it's a skill game or a free-to-play game. Yeah. Playing games is one of the best forms of cognitive exercises that a human brain can get. It is the only format of content which engages both ways. For example, if you take music, if you take reading, if you take audio, so the other formats of content, it's one-way communication. Games is fundamentally two-way communication. You got to see what's happening, you got to think, and you got to respond, right? How is that any different to any other cognitive skill you do, right? And so therefore, playing games has been time and again quoted by multiple academic studies as a fantastic cognitive activity for your brain.
So you're saying the skills that you build by playing a game can actually be applied to real life?
100%. I'll give you a simple example. Decision science and decision science of poker. There are tons of literature available in the world which correlate decision science to decision making in poker, right? In fact, some of the largest hedge funds in the world use poker in their interview mechanisms. And in fact, most large financial institutions, because when you're making investment decisions, you're making them with insufficient information. Even when you're playing poker, you're playing it with insufficient information. So gaming, decision making, decision science, decision theory, game design, all of these are very closely related. Whenever a person is playing game, whichever game it is, your brain's always running.
No, I can just see it playing out there, the level of complexity and how alert you need to be is. And what next for MPL? We've seen your big bets. You spoke about Mayhem Studios, of course. It's out there now in beta. The verdict is yet to be seen. You also have your barsplus.com going for you. Are we also looking at an IPO probably somewhere down the line? Because, that is the other path that a lot of...
I think, at least in the near future, we don't have any such plans. We've demonstrated consistent profitability over the last year. Our intention is to continue growing on that path, grow our top line and bottom line, which, touch wood, we are fairly confident of doing the next year. I think first step is that. And I think come good on the publishing promise that we've made. We will build a publishing business in India. If we do those things, then I think eventually, if an IPO is to happen, we'll take a call at that point.
Great. And last question in terms of, what are the lessons that you've learned, or in retrospect, if you were to do something differently, that is one. And the lessons that you have learned in disrupting this space.
At times, people tend to be very complacent with, incumbents, in the sense that this is how things are to be, this is how things should be. What we've learned is that, the more you try new things and more you innovate is where the future is. So all the companies in this space which are doing new things, we firmly believe they are the ones pushing the industry forward, and we are very excited to learn from them and work with them. And that's one. The second thing, the learning for me would be personally just I wish we understood how hard it is to go international before we went in the first time. I think we are now learning that, and we're slowly harnessing that better. I think that would be the only thing which I'd say if I could change, I'd probably change.
Great, and all the very best to Mayhem Studios and of course to MPL and M League. Thanks so much for your time on Disruptor Dialogues.
Thank you so much.